Welcome back to BSLIVE. Today I want to show you how I created this kind of Mechteria infested scene. It's actually inspired by Fantasian. With Fantasian you have like this beautiful miniature that's kind of infested by this blob of Mechteria. All this sphere with some kind of dark color, kind of like oil, like weird thing, like alien thing. Like in this case I'm just using Blender IV add-on to do that. So Control Option Spacebar. Now we are back. So I started with just making like this random cube. So I started with this kind of thing. I think the process is actually more interesting. I think the final result is predictable slightly, but the procedure is interesting. And after I created these boxes, in this case I'm using sphere chop just to merge all these boxes into a single object. So I just put them into collections. I call it blah. So once I put it inside the blah, it's gonna be joined, and you can see it's kind of procedurally generating the sphere for us. That's because of this sphere chop. Get collections, get the object data, merge it into a single object. And I also have this sphere being generated. And then I use geometry nodes to scatter the sphere, the Mechteria blob, in random and different size. I can randomize the seed. As for the IV bit over here, that's actually being created and generated using IV generator. So this add-on, there's a lot of hidden add-on in Blender. It comes with Blender. So with this IV generator, we can create a target cursor, just place it on an object and then you create an IV. Okay, so you just add a new IV. Let's see, I think you should be able to click. Oh, okay, you need to select an object and then place your 3D cursor, and then by default it's already projected on the surface, so it's kind of like a target. It's placing the 3D cursor, and then you can add a new IV. By default the IV is growing leaves. We don't want to have leaves. Update the IV. We can increase the size. Update the IV. Maybe not too big. Yeah, something like that, or even smaller. Yeah, I think that's okay. Increase the branching. Place the IV, and then I just right click and then add it into quick favorite, so we can just use Q and add a new IV. So this is how I generated the Mechteria object for this kind of scene. See, it's actually pretty cool to be able to do that. You can randomize the seed and then update the IV. Increase the length of the IV a little bit. Okay, so you can even place it on the bottom, add a new IV. So this is basically how it works. And once you're happy with all this IV, you select all of them and then just give it a material based on the last selected objects. Just Command L, link the material. So the material is just simply like this black metallic, while the Mechteria blob, I like to add like some subsurface scattering if I want to. So there's another way to do this if you want to do it by hand. I think it's more you need to do it manually, but it's actually a little bit more fun and it's a hands-on things. So you start with a cube, of course, and you just make your city. You can actually start with like a 3D scan. You are making like an abstract objects, you know, like placing the block is always good. And this is actually, I found it to be quite therapeutic. So you can make this while listening to music. It's always nice. If you're happy or unhappy about this, you can actually select all of them and then F3 and then randomize transform, and then here you can play around with the locations, randomizations in the rotations if you want to. So that's and scale. So this is it might be what you want or maybe not. Just zero it out. Okay, once you're happy, now we want to add more objects. Let's select all of this and then just Command J, merge it into a single object. If you want to do a scattering, there's a hidden tool also called Scatter Objects by Jacques Luke. Okay, the way it works, once you install or enable the add-on, you just go F3 and then Scatter Objects. So by default, it's okay. It's complaining. Select objects to scatter and target objects. This is the last object selected is a target objects. So if we have like a UV sphere and we smooth it, so this is going to be the scattered object. We can select the cube and then F3 scatter objects, and then we're gonna have some kind of ways to kind of doodle around. It's almost like grease pencil. We are drawing lines, basically like drawing grease pencil lines on top of these objects. And the way you control this scattering is by going into this tool, play around with the density and the radius and the scaling. Now if I make it small, you can see the lines. You can see the lines being drawn. That's the grease pencil line. Just minimize the seed scale. And then hit enter. So you have this Mechteria blob, which is pretty neat. It's a manual work, but it's not procedural. With procedural you can always change the setting later, but in this case you just kind of doodle around it. Still, I think I found it to be quite nice to be able to do this hands-on things. So let's do another one. Just paint this blob on top of the block. Still, and play with the radius, the scaling, randomizations, normal rotation on and off. Randomize the seed, enter. You can have multiple objects, including the donuts. So the donuts, sphere, maybe I actually have boxes. So 1, 2, 3, and then scatter objects. So it's gonna be scattering all over our blocks. You can play with the radius. So it's totally random. Hit enter. Yeah, I don't think we have options to change after. In this case, it's just like a once-off thing. It's probably better to do this using geometry nodes. If you want to do it these days, you just paint like weighting. So you maybe turn your objects into like a remesh. So you have like a bunch of resolution there. So once you remesh this, you can use paint weight and start painting on top of this. This is gonna be something that you scatter the Mechteria objects over the block. It's a very interesting tool. This is actually something that like a layout artists like to have, and it's some kind of ways to scatter objects in the scene. Yeah, okay, that's the weighting already being painted, and this is 1, 2, 3 objects. I'm just gonna put into new collections. I call it instance, and we go to geometry nodes, select our objects, this blocked, and we're gonna instance distribute. First we're gonna distribute points based on the group. That's the one that's we painted. And we're gonna do point instancing of the collections, turn off whole collection, select our instance object, and then just scatter. So this is kind of a way to do it manually. Let's run random Mechteria. Point scale. I can randomize the scale here procedurally. And we can bring our original object. So join geometry. We can use this knit tool, I think. Oops. Okay, I always forget. Option right click. Look at this. Option right click. You can drag it. That's how you connect. It's pretty neat. Okay, so we bring in our original objects, and time to add some material. Maybe that's the base material. Okay, I'm gonna just assign material. That's the base object. And we can assign other materials to the objects. But anyway, for our instance, we can just hide it. So we have all this randomness happening. And on top of that, of course, we don't forget our IV generator. So select our objects. Use the 3D cursor surface project, okay. And then just place it anywhere you like. And then add new IV. Remember our IV? It's hiding here. Turn off leaves. Increase the branching. Increase the IV length. And update the IV. Okay, let's do a couple of this IV. Sometimes it's can be slightly unpredictable. Usually the IV is growing up with the gravity. You can turn off the gravity weight. So I think adhesion, I like to have the adhesion, and then the increase the IV size a little bit more and increase the branching. Anyway, you can play around with this yourself. Randomize the seed. But that's basically the process. Okay, so it's you might find it interesting, might be a little bit strange, but with the one that's using geometry nodes, you can always play around with the density. Seed, point scale. So you can even change the instancing. If you don't want the donuts, you can get rid of the cube and the torus. So you have just the sphere. Oh, actually, oh, it's in here. Okay, get rid of the torus, get rid of the sphere, get rid of the cube, and keep the sphere. So we have just the Mechteria object. Okay, so less is better, of course. point scale. Okay, randomize scale. So that's the Mechteria object. Procedural is definitely a better way to do this. So I'm back to painting weight and scattering more of this blob. So now we can adjust the scale. So we end up with this, lots of IV curve. Just put it inside collections. So it's tidier. So we have these instance objects, we have the original cube, this is the base, and we can get rid of everything else. Yeah, I think overall, I think this is pretty fun to do, and it's quite relaxing. So you're painting and drawing on the fly. And now you have, you understand a lot of tools. We understand this IV generator, and there is also like scatter tools from Jack's Look and geometry nodes. All right, so you're learning, and you also have tools to just scatter random objects. I think this is quite fun and important to understand. All right, so hopefully you find this interesting. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.